Good afternoon, and welcome to the latest episode of RockCreek Insights. I am Alifia Doriwala, co-CIO of RockCreek's OCIO and Multi-Asset Solutions. Throughout International Women's Month, we have held discussions with women leaders across industry, finance, and philanthropy about marshaling resources to strengthen women's economic empowerment and create new economic opportunities for women around the world. I hope you've had the chance to tune into some of these insightful and thoughtful conversations. As countries emerge from the pandemic, they face the challenge of financing an equitable recovery. Women were disproportionately affected by the pandemic, as we've all heard. 4 million women were forced to leave the workforce in the US alone, and decades of women's employment gains have been lost. How can we ensure equality in education, training, mentorship, and opportunity? How can we drive diversity in our own industry and harness the power of finance to provide equal opportunities across other industries and globally? These are some of the questions we are trying to answer today and every day at RockCreek and through our investments. As we close our celebration of International Women's Month, it's my pleasure to speak with Maggie Arvedlund, CEO and Managing Partner of Turning Rock Partners. Maggie previously served as Managing Director at Fortress Investment Group, where she oversaw private equity and debt investments for a multi-strategy vehicle across asset classes and capital structures. Outside of Turning Rock, Maggie serves on several nonprofit boards and the U.S. Small Business Administration Council for Underserved Communities. Maggie, I am so excited to have the chance to talk to you today and have everyone out there learn more about your inspiring trajectory in finance, and especially how you're using your experiences to make an impact. Thank you so much for being with us. So I'm curious, given your own background at larger, well-established firms like Fortress, what made you want to strike out and really start your own firm?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm delighted to answer it. And it's a terrific way to kick this off, because at the end of every journey professionally starts a new one. And for us, it was all about the opportunity set. We loved our time at the Fortress Investment Group, but I was professionally ready to take on a new challenge. I really saw white space. I saw the need to provide flexible capital solutions to small and mid-sized corporates. And I really felt that those needs were not being answered inside the four walls of a big, top 10 asset manager. And so while I loved my time there, I learned a ton. I, had great returns and made wonderful friends. And of course, many of the founders and now key partners at Turning Rock are also Fortress alumni. It was the right time. So it was a good time professionally and personally. But it was also very much driven by what we saw as an opportunity set to provide smaller, more customized solutions to private companies that fell outside of what a big top 10 asset manager could do, but needed more than what maybe a traditional bank could provide.
Can you talk a little bit about how we've thought about approaching the construction of a gender lens investment strategy in the private debt space? And then, maybe some specific examples about the opportunities you're seeing. Where are you finding women entrepreneurs in need of debt financing that some of us would not necessarily assume are in need of debt financing?
So I'll take one step back, Alifia, just to set the stage for, the overall market, right? The overall market, we think, for what I'll call structured capital solutions into the founder-owned and operated space, which is different from the LBO sponsor-backed stuff. So just for folks on the line, what we do is we find these sole proprietorships or family-owned companies that are highly aligned, highly driven by their founding teams. And they need typically capital that's in the $10 to $50 million range. And the reason why they need that capital can range. Sometimes it's to support growth, right? They might need to acquire a new business or enter a new line of customer demand. Sometimes it's to refinance an obligation that doesn't make sense for them anymore. Or sometimes it's really to think about acquisition or bolt-on. And so when we think about the overall opportunity set, we think there's about $1.5 trillion of demand out there for firms like us, and that gets deployed over a 2 to 5 year period. When you then peel back the onion a little bit and you think about, okay, within that space, within this investable universe, what falls into our categories? And our categories, as we've talked about previously, asset-backed industries, relatively more stable. Most of our revenue trajectories, they're not growing 20% year over year. They're growing, 3 to 10. They're more predictable in nature. Many of them are led by talented entrepreneurs. And so when we started going through the data, the first way that we thought about attacking it was, how deep is this market? Because we know what the headline number is, but let's actually drill down and understand. And we found that there were over 16,000 companies, so potential issuers in North America, that had revenue between 10 to 150 million that met those criteria. And so we, as a credit shop, right, of course, wanted to go down to the fundamentals and say, okay, what do we think that this capital need could be used for? And, in doing primary research to understand this, we met with thousands and thousands of companies over 5 years at TRP, and of course, 10 years plus at Fortress. And the common theme is smart capital. So it's not just about the cost of capital, it's what more do you bring? And I think that, women-led companies often, there's this mantra out there that women-led companies are less risk-taking, or, don't produce the results that male-led groups do. And I've always thought that that was a bit silly. Like, on what basis, right? Let's debunk that a bit. And what we found actually is that female-led companies are fairly sound in terms of judgment. They generally have strong corporate governance, but they oftentimes don't have access to the incumbent financing networks that maybe some of their male-oriented peers might, because of a range of factors. It could just be time and attention, could be backgrounds, could be all sorts of things. So we really attacked it bottoms up, and we're very pleased that we've developed a robust pipeline of companies that require this capital. So just to put a finer point on it, we're looking at an investment right now in a female-led digital transformation company, bootstrapped founder. She's been at it for 15 years. She provides, desktop to cloud conversions for Fortune 2000 companies. And so she's solving, the need to have service conundrum for large enterprise today. And she's reinvested her proceeds every single year. So we are proposing, the first institutional round of debt to support her growth. And she is so happy to be taking that capital, not from a bank, not from a big, large firm, but from a, women-led organization that is making a difference. And in addition, we're leveraging off of our core TRP playbook, which we alluded to before, which is the use of senior advisors, the deep work on the collateral and the downside protection. So we've really been very pleasantly surprised at how deep the market is and how in need of this solution these companies really are.
An organization, Him for Her and Crunchbase, found that roughly 40% of high growth private companies didn't have a single woman on their board of directors last year, and 78% didn't have any women of color on their boards. And what's worse is probably that those are actually better numbers than what we saw the previous year. You're kind of at a unique, I think, intersection in terms of your relationship with these companies and where they are in their formation and their growth to really talk about governance. A, seeing if the governance is something that you want to get involved with, but B, during the growth of these companies and as your partner along the way, how do you change the governance? How do you improve the governance, or how do you ensure the governance is robust? So I'm curious if you've seen examples of things that work, that don't work, that private companies that you're working with have seen successful, or also where are there pitfalls that companies really need to look for?
Part of it is you've got to do the work as a lender. You also have to work with the company a bit. So, we go back and forth about the carrot and the stick. So in Europe, they're doing all these ESG ratchets and grid pricing in their loan agreements. And I'm sure, many of your clients and partners are well familiar with that. The US private credit market really hasn't adopted that yet. We're working on it. But sometimes it just it creates a lot of complexity for the borrower. And part of our job is to make things more streamlined for him or her. So I think being realistic about what can be achieved pre-close and then in a period after. The other thing that we do is we offer access to key service providers that we may have. So for example, if they are looking to add a more diverse member to their board or in their C-suite, we have many recruiters, many board advisors and others. And we've seen also that as being very well received, because sometimes the narrative may be, I don't know where to start. I want to accomplish this, but I'm just not sure how. So I think having an honest conversation, doing the fundamental work, but also promoting an ecosystem that can help to support implementation is critical.
What advice do you have for young women and girls about navigating a career in finance, or for those that dream of starting and running their own company? All challenges that we've discussed that you have navigated very successfully throughout your career. I'm wondering if you have a few magic secret bullets that we can take away during International Women's Month.
I could probably ask you the same, but I would say, I had a mentor, Katie Hall, many years ago, who used to say, just keep going. And I think that that's the best advice, at various points in one's career, male or female, right? You have to acknowledge that you're not going to be perfect in all regards. And so whether that's, mother, father, sister, brother, right, professional, personal, and others, you'll never be 100% in every category. And so as long as you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, you can keep going. But for anyone on the phone that's thinking about starting their own firms, I would love, please follow up. I would love to hear more about your plans. And we look forward to seeing the next generation of asset managers.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie, for your time and insights today. It was a pleasure, as always, to hear your passion, your dedication, your experience in helping entrepreneurs, and a wonderful way to cap off our International Women's Month series. So we appreciate your time and look forward to hearing much more.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.